Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia, here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course author interviews. And this week I have 3 new reviews for you folks at home. That's going to include a review for Forest of Desire, Alchemist, book number 2, written by Vasily Mahenko. Also reviewing this week, the SyStem, Multiverse, book number 1, and True Smithing, a crafting LitRPG series. So all 3 reviews for you folks here at home. But before we get into that, we're of course going to start the show off with some LitRPG news. And to start off with the LitRPG news, we're going to talk about the Independent Audiobook Awards that happened recently. And huge congratulations goes to this year's Independent Audiobook Awards winner in the Game LitRPG category for World Tree Online, written by E. Hooper and narrated by Justin Thomas James, Jeff Hayes, and Lori Catherine Winkle. So congratulations to those folks who won that particular category. Also in LitRPG news, we have the folks at Authors and Dragons podcast are running a crowdfunding campaign for a comic version of the podcast Adventures. It's a very funny podcast. It's one of my weekly listens, and has some funny authors in LitRPG or GameLit or adjacently, like Robert Bevan, who wrote Critical Failures and who published a bunch of funny short stories in that series, and also Drew Hayes, who wrote NPCs and a bunch of other really good stuff. That's not LitRPG, but still, a couple of guys who are in our genre adjacent to us. And there's a lot of great supporter awards that you can check out at their Indiegogo page. And as of this recording, the project is actually fully funded, so you know that this comic is going to get made. This is really just for one comic. I think they're testing the waters to see what kind of interest there is. People are kind of willing to kind of fork over cash in advance to get this comic-y goodness. But it's an entertaining podcast. So check out their podcast. It's the Authors and Dragons podcast, or check out their Indiegogo campaign if you want to support them there as well. So thanks. And other LitRPG news, we have a sale here to celebrate the completion of the Nova Online Trilogy. Portal Books, who is the publisher of that series, has discounted book 1 to free and book 2 to 99 cents. We'll have a link in the show notes for you guys to check those out. I believe the sale is going on for about 4 or 5 days. Book 3 comes out on the 23rd of June. So they're definitely trying to prep you to getting ready for that final book in this particular series. On to stuff that is out now. We have White Soul on book number 1 of Martial Souls, a cultivation martial arts LitRPG epic fantasy adventure written by G.L. Rathwig. Also out now is Glitch World, and also God Mode, a LitRPG Sangha, Myth the Ruin Online, as is the 4th book in the Crafter's Dungeon series, which is a highly popular series written by Jonathan Brooks, I believe. He's almost top 100 on this particular series, so good for him. He has a huge fan base, and it's a fun story. Also out now is Rise, the Last Chance, book number 1 by Katie Hanna. This is actually her new series from that particular author. So definitely go check her out. It's a fun, good author. I've enjoyed her works. Also out is going to be Ithria, book number 2, The Golem Maker, an epic LitRPG adventure, and is Rise of the Unted, a short story novella with humor and gameplay according to the author. Gate Wars, Upheaval, a LitRPG novella, is out for you to enjoy, as is Concord Online, another story, and the 7th book in the Second Skin book series called Wayward is out for you to enjoy, and a new story from M.Q. Karjak, who's the author of the Death God series, if you've ever read that. It myriad stars Wuji Chronicles, a cultivation LitRPG universe story. So all kinds of great stuff for you to enjoy that's out now. I haven't just read it, but it's there for you to listen to and to read. We're listening to things next with new LitRPG audiobooks. And that's going to include Kingdom Come, book number 3 in the Alchemy Chronicles online series. Book number 4 in the Realm Between series called Magical is out for an audiobook listen. The Incarnator Project Solo book number 1 is out for you to listen to. This one was kind of a fun one. It was Bio Dungeon Symbiote Bodies Dungeon. It combines a dungeon core story and the human body. So it's a little bit like that episode of the Magic School Bus where they went into the human body system, but it's also combined with the dungeon core story. So it was a real interesting, unique kind of mix. Lots of sciencey words here and there. So if you like the kind of stuff, out for you to enjoy. I liked it. Folks who are fans of the Awaken Line series probably already have this book. Awaken Line book number 2 in the Tarot series called Flame. So there we go. Also out is God Mode, a LitRPG Saga. So the ebook and the audiobook are out at the exact same time. So, yay. On to stuff that is coming out in the near future, upcoming LitRPG. We're going to start with June 23rd for Nova Online Book Number 3, which you just mentioned. The publishers are going to sell Book 1 and 2, and Harbinger, the third book in that series, will be out again on June 23rd. June 23rd is also the date for the Dungeon Ilaria Book Number 2. And June 26th is the third book in the Space Season series called Summer Friction. The fifth book in the Respawn series, which has kind of been a favorite of mine since it came out. It's a Russian translation book by Arthur Stone. It is out on June 29th. On June 30th, it'll be the fourth book in the Sky Realms Online series, Green Fire. June 30th, it'll be the first book in League of Losers, A Cat and His Human, by Michael Antonov, who is a well-known Russian liberty author who's translated a lot of his stories over, and this is a new series from him. On June 30th, it'll be the third book in the God's Game series. On June 30th, a new book from Devin Ospelin called The Boneless Dungeon Rebirth. July the 1st, it'll be Stars Asunder, book number 9 in the System Apocalypse series by Tao Wong. July the 1st, it'll be Reincarnation, The Last Born of Kiddarth trilogy. So we'll see if it actually is a trilogy at some point. Dave Wilmar's new series called Battleborn will be out on July the 1st. On July the 1st, it'll be Orcspawn Betrayal, a LitRPG gamelet story. On July the 7th, it'll be The Path of Faith, the sixth book, that's sixth, in the Project Chrysalis series. On July the 8th as well, it'll be the second book in the Project Stellar series, book number 1. The audiobook just came out this week. On July the 9th, it'll be Legends Online, book number 6. July the 14th, the second book in the Life in Exile series. July the 14th, the third book in the Alchemist series by Vasily Mejia called Tears of Alron. We're actually reviewing the second book in the series on the podcast this week. On July the 15th rather, it'll be a new series from Ember Lane called 4X Hex, a little bitty strategy series of Villa Online. So enjoy that author. I'll definitely pick this one up. The second book in the Eternal Line series will be out on July the 28th called The Ruined Temple. July the 31st, it'll be Arrow of Justice. On August the 4th, it'll be The World of the Undead Forest, book number 1, which is another Russian translation. On August the 8th, the fourth book in the Bad Guy series called War of the Posers. August the 11th, the Heavenly Throne book number 2 series. August the 18th, the first book in the Intellectium series, another translation work. August the 27th, Small Unit Tactics, another translation. You're seeing a trend here, aren't you guys? September the 9th, Dungeon Worlds, a Reborn Online series by Aurora Weiss. October the 7th, City of Goblins, The System. Guess what? Another translation. October the 26th, last on the list that I'm going as far as October, the fourth book in the Underdog series, The Other World. And yes, it is another translation. So there you go, folks. All the stuff that I know is coming out all the way up to October. Go schedule your book. Go schedule your paychecks to pick up all these books. I know that's what I have to do. So there you go. On to new releases and reviews. Okay, first book this week is written by Vasily Mejia, author of the Way the Shaman series, called The Force of Desire, The Alchemist, book number 2. It is actually a connecting series to another real-life RPG apocalypse series he has before. It is 405 pages, $6.99, and it is actually available on Kindle Unlimited. A lot of these translation stories don't actually end up being on Kindle Unlimited because they... publishers like to put them out on multiple platforms, or they're trying to recoup their costs before putting it unlimited. But I think the author insisted this time. And here's the author's description. Is there anything better than a quiet life? Well, there's a quiet life surrounded by people who you care about, who love you in return, of course. But Talion Vashilish knew nothing of the kind. His parents had died years before, the townspeople stayed well away from the god's favorite, and his guardian just wanted to be rid of him. That was the setting when Talion was again placed on the road to uncertainty, beset by terrifying lynxes, and hounded by a harsh trainer it was impossible to please. All they can do is bear up and keep pushing forward in the hopes that his wishes will be granted. As legend has it, somewhere ahead lies the Forest of Desire, a place capable of bringing to life one's every wish. For example, returning Valia Levor, Talon Betrothed, who was kidnapped. Oh, and does anybody know why Forian Tarn still isn't back from his trip? Okay. The description kind of brings up one of the points that I had with the story, in that I don't remember who all those people, even though it's only been a little over, I think, a month since this first book came out. I read a lot of stuff. And so for me, having a nice synopsis of characters or events, especially character names, is super helpful in my brain of like, oh yeah, that's right. Goodbye, bad person, betrayer, whatever the case is. So that's one of the things for me. Okay, full disclosure, I received Ben's copy for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. I generally purchase these anyways. This is a fun, action-packed slice-of-life adventure. And he continues, beware that it is slice-of-life, though. The main character and his group are stranded in enemy territory and have to fight and think their way past deadly obstacles, traps, and monstrous guardians. There's a slight expansion of game mechanics with new potions, but the main character's exploits remain fun. This is actually one of the... think a lot of people liked about book one is that aspect of him having this unique characteristic where he's tech level 1, but he's getting a bunch of bonuses that wouldn't be available to other people otherwise, and so he's using it to this advantage. So that still exists here. I had, again, tiny issue, and other reviewers actually had other issues. I'm just going to mention them because it might, I guess, impact your experience or deciding to continue on. Did for me. For me, again, a small recap would have been super helpful. I found myself like reading the beginning, like, I don't remember who any of these people are besides the main character. And that's often the case when you have multiple secondary characters, for me at least. Like, my brain only holds so many names. And so just having like a small recap of like, oh, that's who this person is. This is the relationship with this person in the main group, is sometimes just a little helpful in like getting back into the story faster. But again, tiny little thing. Other reviews that I've read online for Amazon had noted a couple of similar concepts of issues for them. I mentioned that it bugged them that there wasn't more plot progression, which is why I mentioned at the very beginning of this is a slice of life story. And sometimes that means the story feels a little random because you're just following characters going about on their daily adventures or whatever the case is, or their survival, or in this case, survival and an escape and some quest expansion. And I can absolutely understand how that comes through in the story because it is a slice of life story. And so plot investment isn't always up here. I know Vasily Manko as a writer often has these secret plots and twists in all of his stories. And that definitely comes through here a bit as well. But again, for the most part, it is a slice of life story. So you're following these characters as they go along on their adventures, and for better or worse. I will say that, without spoiling things, that there are some quest line that's are completed in the second book, and there is a lot of setup for other things in the series that will be coming up later, hopefully. But again, slice of life, that's what you get. Overall, it was a fun story for me. I don't think I liked it quite as much as book one, just because book one was really new and fresh, and it brought up a lot of new stuff. And book two is just kind of continuing on from those things that it built up without necessarily bringing in a ton of new things for itself. So not that it's not good. It's just that, book one got an 8 out of 10 for me. Book two, 7.8. Still very good. Still really nice. Not quite, I like book one. It looked like a tiny bit more. But for me, still really had a good time with that score of 7.8 out of 10, which is a really good score for me. For Forest of Desire, The Alchemist, book number 2. Okay. Next up is the SyStem Multiverse, book number 1, written by John Svensson. It is 430 pages, $5.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Brett Hayes never expected his life to amount to much. He escaped Boston with help from his mother to head to the West Coast and create a new life in Seattle. All that changes when he attends a party to celebrate his friend's new physics invention, a device that connects two universes together. Events quickly spiral out of control as Brett and his best friend's ex-girlfriend find themselves pulled by the device and end up in a different version of Earth, one that has been stripped of its resources and populated by an alien race. Will the Earth they come from share a similar fate? Can they escape the dimension they've been sent to and find their way back home? And do they want to escape after learning more about the universe they find themselves in? More importantly, can they change the system that controls everything in that universe and many more? Then there's some other stuff. It says the John Smith author biomedical engineering series, which I've also reviewed in the show. So there we go. Full disclosure, I received advance copy for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. This is a slice of life LitRPG story. It's mostly on the sci-fi side. It features two protagonists who are kidnapped and taken to an alternate dimension. The two must use that universe's RPG system to grow powerful enough to escape their captors and find some way to get home or destroy the system that's giving them their power. Again, it's just kind of a slice of story. It follows these characters as they go through the sci-fi universe, go through space, traveling through space on spaceships, gaining skills and kills and the sci-fi theme and fight and kill aliens, shoot spaceships, and kind of survive. There is some decent action in the story. I thought the more interesting betrayals and plot lines, and that kept the story moving forward. However, often it felt like the main characters were stumbling through it all and not really making their own decisions, being pushed around by other forces, which is kind of a pet peeve, and that kind of distracted a little bit for the story for me. The game stuff is not particularly complex. There are skills and levels, and they're gained for just about doing everything, completing quests, learning how to fly a spaceship. There are lots of notifications. So the RPG system is definitely a big part of the story. Tons of notifications for quests, and the system is baked into the universe, or that once you get to the alternate universe, it is. But beyond the limitation of only having a certain number of skills equipped, depending upon your level, there's not a whole lot that's really new as far as the game mechanic system is. It's pretty solid. It follows through, and it's pretty consistent. So nothing to complain, just nothing to kind of brag about either. Overall, the game mechanics are more kind of skill focused. It is overall a decent read, not super amazing, not terrible, entertaining, just like, okay, just kind of barely. I was entertained enough by the betrayals in the sci-fi universe to follow the characters to the end of the story and through their adventures. I don't know that I would read a book 2 though. It was good enough. Like, I don't regret like reading or anything. But the clear lack of goals for the main characters and the fact that they felt a lot of times like they didn't have agency up until like the end of the story, and a lack of like really good antagonists, left me just wanting a little. So for me, it could score 7.1 on 10. I still enjoyed it. Not my favorite book of the week, but still had a good time with it. Don't regret purchasing it. That's the SyStem Multiverse, book number 1, with a score of 7.1 out of 10. And next up, we have True Smithing. This is the crafting lit RPG written by Jared Bandani, whose stories are sometimes off hit or miss with actually being lit RPG. This one's definitely a hit, though. It is 293 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. Angus Bjornsson only ever wanted to do one thing: to continue crafting exquisite weapons and pieces of armor for his loyal customers. Unfortunately, after one accident too many that leave the old blacksmith completely disabled, it would seem he has no other choice but to hang up his hammer. However, that would be underestimating the stubbornness of the self-made man. Fearing he's not going to stop until he ends up dead in his forge, Angus's children offer him a virtual rig that connects to Imperium Games' many, many universes. After choosing a fantasy-based world called Alterwelt, Angus, known as Hephaestus, quickly learns that he can make use of his lifetime of experience by disabling the auto function and playing in manual. His skills allow him to create unique items that beat everything sold on the market, but Hephaestus has a long way to go before he can afford his own in-game forge. That's not true. Moreover, he only ever learned to work with steel, and while he has access to metals as strange and exotic as anzium, viridium, orchidium, still, that might be the least of his problems. After he's made a few sales and starts to get some recognition, Hephaestus realizes that there's a reason that the market is oversaturated with crappy items. As it turns out, a greedy guild enforces a monopoly on the crafting, and they're ready to do anything to keep anyone, least of all a lone blacksmith, from digging into their profits. Okay, and that novel description definitely gives away most of the plot. But I had some issues with the story, and I'll talk about the same. Overall, this is a good little bit of crafting story once it gets past the 40% mark. Before then, the crafting stuff in this novel, all the way through, really nice, top notch. Good descriptions, good descriptions of not just the items themselves, but also the process of making them by hand, the thought process that the main character goes through in forging and deciding what to and how to make it. All that's good all the way through. However, before the 40% mark, it's the other things around the story that kind of almost made me put it down, to be honest. But after that 40% mark, once the big antagonist of the story, the villain, shows up, the story gets a heck of a lot better. And the rest of the novel was definitely enjoyable for me, even though there are still a few wavy moments. First, I'll say that again, I liked the crafting. The crafting is definitely the big draw of this novel. So if you like crafting, you might just enjoy the story based upon that one aspect alone. I'm a huge fan of crafting and game mechanics and building of things. It's something I really enjoy, which is why the story was that aspect of it was super enjoyable. However, the other parts, especially at the beginning of the novel, kind of drew away and almost in conflict to the realism aspect, because in this particular story, one of the game mechanic elements is that there are almost two different sets of rules. One is set on, as the novel description tells you, so this isn't spoiler, an auto mode, which is like automatic combat. You press a button or shortcuts, and your character does automatic combat skills or crafting, right? Very push button kind of crafting. The other option in the story, in this game mode rather, is a realism option, which was a manual, I think it's called in the novel description, where everything's manual. You have to use your real life skills, whether it's fishing or fighting or crafting in this instance. And for me, those two systems, I felt like they were in conflict, which is probably the point of the story. But for me, it felt like there was such a conflict that they didn't really mesh well. And even though the author clearly goes out of way to say, oh, the game designers meant for the manual players to have an advantage if they're applying their skills or if they're learning. Still, for me, it gave the main character such a huge advantage without showing the reader where he got his skills from, that it felt a little off. The main character, for example, is a master blacksmith in real life. Lifetime of learning. He's like 70-something years old. And apparently all that crafting experience translates perfectly into the game. Well, so much so that he can create these amazingly powerful items and weapons and armors with these big stat bonuses. And he uses those to kind of accomplish his goals in one way or another. But the reader is not shown him getting or really kind of learning anything about crafting for a good majority of the story. He gets some different experiences with different kinds of metals and materials, but the actual process of learning about crafting is just already set. He's already done that. And so me as a reader, when I'm reading it, I felt like there was a lack of earned power. He already had all the power he was going to have for the entire story. And that kind of is the case in this story. So I felt a little cheapened on that particular aspect, because again, that conflict between the auto mode and the manual mode, I should say. And this kind of extends to combat to a degree as well, because the main character in the beginning of the story gets into a fight, and because he's using realism mode, you think, oh, he's probably not gonna get his butt kicked, because right, he's a blacksmith his whole life. Nope. He kicks a player who's about, I think, 20 levels higher than him. And I won't say if he wins or not, but he definitely kicks his butt for the most part. And it's because apparently the main character is also a reenactor who uses his weapons to test them out and to make sure they're right. And so he, in realism mode, beats the person in auto mode. And I'm like, that just was a definitely a schism for my brain. And that in that 20 level difference doesn't really seem to matter then. Those levels don't really matter in that particular setting. And again, it's one of those things that it felt like the main character had power that he didn't really earn. The same kind of goes with his crafting a little bit, in that even the novel description says it's going to be a while till he gets his own forge, and that's definitely not the case. He actually gets a forge really super early in the story, in that first 40% mark, without actually having earned it. Like someone gives it to him. And even though there's plotting that makes it all kind of make sense, it still felt like, oh, he didn't earn it to a degree. And even though it does make sense in the story, I'm not saying it doesn't. It's just, again, kind of an example of earned power, that power that wasn't really earned in the beginning portion of the story, which is again where I had the biggest issues. again, that part almost made me kind of put the book down for a little bit and not pick it up. But I pushed past it because that's just what I do. And again, after that 40% mark, the story really does get good. The antagonist, when he shows up, is such a jerk and so well written in that he's meant not to be liked, that all the other parts of the story just kind of fit better. It's mostly because the N1, the crafting becomes the focus of the combat for the main character doesn't exist anymore. Like, and it shouldn't. It never really made sense in the story for me. But everything then revolves around the crafter, which is the aspect that I really, really liked about the story. And so all the goals, all the obstacles, revolve then around the crafting, which is what, in my opinion, should have happened the entire story. So it really took off again after about the 40% mark or so. So for me, I had a good time with it. Again, the beginning kind of drew it, lessened my enjoyment a bit, but I'm really glad I pushed past it, and I enjoyed the rest of the story entirely. For me, it's going to get a score of about 7.4 out of 10, just because of those issues in the beginning of the story. That's True Smithing, a crafting lit RPG series with a score of 7.4 out of 10. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. End of the episode. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening with me. Remember, you can follow us, and please do, on Facebook, at Twitter, on YouTube, on Patreon. We have links in the show notes for all those places you can find the podcast and see our weekly reviews and a whole huge back catalog of episodes and reviews for you to enjoy. And of course, you can find our LitRPG database, where we have the some odd thousand LitRPG reviews we've done, including our favorite series and the best reviewed ones, the best scores at litrpgpodcast.com. We have also links in the show notes for a bunch of groups where LitRPG authors and readers get together and we talk and we chat and we goof off and we share bacon memes and good things like that. So go check those out as well. So thank you again for hanging out with me today. And until we can hang out again, remember to go read some LitRPG.